Are Christians happier than atheists? I'm posing this question to everyone watching this video. My hope for this is to have a discussion in the comments to make this a very interactive experience, because I'm truly very interested in your thoughts on what I'm about to say. So the last video I made on Christian cringe was Girl Defined, talking about how they're waiting to kiss for marriage, and more importantly, what God's definition of marriage even is. And in that, they were pretty damn homophobic.
We see him creating marriage to be between a man and a woman, one man, one woman.
Now, I've been going to atheist conventions for a long time. I think my first one was like 4 years ago. And it was really refreshing for me because for the first time since I was religious, I was surrounded by a community of people who thought in a similar way to me, and I'm gonna come back to that later. But people would joke around, we were among peers, and people would say things like, if you're happy and you know it, it's a sin. And that stuck in my head. Actually, I found out recently that's actually from The Simpsons.
If you're happy and you know it, that's a sin. If you're happy and you know it, that's a sin.
I don't know, I think that's pretty funny. So the other day I tweeted, and this is about to get good, I tweeted that, I added to it, I finished the rest of the song. If you're happy and you know it, Jesus surely won't condone it. If you're happy and you know it, burn in hell. Burn in hell. What I expected from this tweet was a couple people going, lol. What I did not expect was it to actually get retweeted enough times to get somehow filtered through the religious communities online, which really pissed a lot of religious people off. They interpreted that not as, oh, she just posted this video on Girl Defined and she's commenting the same day about how it seems as though a lot of things people do in life that are fun are instantly condemned by Christians as a sin. Ha ha ha. They were like, no, she thinks you can't even be happy if you're religious. That any happiness one could ever find at all in life is therefore frowned upon by religious people. Which is not what I was saying, but that's not how it was interpreted. Welcome to the internet. But as usual, there's a silver lining in things. It started a really interesting conversation that, again, I would like to present to everyone watching this video. Do you feel happier now as an atheist if you are? And if you're a religious person, do you think you're happier as a result of that? Statistically, there's a lot of conflicting data on this. There are lower suicide rates among religious people, but that could be due to multiple factors. One of them being suicide is a sin, and another one being that people are less likely to commit suicide if they are surrounded by a community of people, which often you can find in a church. And that brings me back to going to a lot of atheist conventions, which I loved so much because that was the thing that I was missing. Whenever I broke away from religion, I also broke away from a community of people that I did enjoy spending time with. I enjoyed getting together for Christmas, and even though I'm an atheist, I still celebrate Christmas because you don't need to believe in Jesus to open presents and enjoy spending time with loved ones and having a family dinner, and all that shit's great. I love Rudolph, okay? Also, in their defense, I found an article, and I will link it in the description below, that says religious people are in the majority in the US, but in a minority in Denmark and the Netherlands. Feeling part of the mainstream may be comforting, whereas being in the minority is potentially stressful. Ethnic minorities around the world tend to have higher blood pressure, for example, this being a reliable index of stress. So it could be that since more people in the United States are religious, not being religious could be a form of stress, and feeling part of the group, feeling part of the mainstream could be comforting. And this is true, trust me, I have experienced it firsthand. I can't tell you how many times I've been made to feel like there's something wrong with me or that I'm a bad person or lacking morals because I don't hold the same beliefs as others. And if, again, like me, you stepped away from a community in that deconversion, then there is a sense of isolation that you get that can also be very damaging. But if we take that element out of it, we do see that a lot of secular countries are actually way more happy. According to Gallup data for 2010, the happiest nations were Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and the Netherlands, those among the least religious countries in the world. Also, according to Gallup data, Sweden, Denmark, and Norway were the second, third, and fourth least religious states. Okay, so you see what I'm saying here. The most religious countries, in fact, are not the happiest. So how I started going down this rabbit hole, a girl on Twitter who appears to be pretty religious quoted my tweet and said this: "Happiness and joy are not the same. I remember being a, quote, happy agnostic." All right, pause. Everyone is agnostic. Agnostic and atheist are two totally different words. I've explained this so many different times. Agnostic just means to not have knowledge. Theism is what refers to whether or not you have belief despite that knowledge, or atheism, a lack of belief. I know what it's like to be sad as a Christian. There was no joy in suffering before I found Christ. None. Suffering was incomprehensible. Instead, I chased happy, totally reliant on the heights to survive. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Roaming Millennial actually replied to that. I don't get why some people think Christianity condemns happiness. Christianity doesn't promise happiness, but it doesn't forbid or shame it. I mean, okay, that's really easily debunked. Ask anyone who is gay. I'm pretty sure their happiness is not something they can achieve within the context of what religion teaches. And for the love of the God that I do not believe in, please no one say, but they don't have to act on it. Don't try to tell me that there's nothing wrong with gay people so long as they don't act on being gay. It'd be pretty impossible to be happy if you could never actually engage in physical activity with someone that you are in love with. And being gay is just one example. There are so many different things that Christianity shames for no reason. It makes people feel guilt for things they should not feel guilt over. This is not news. This shouldn't be shocking information to anyone. Not to mention that Christians on average are happier than atheists. That is the purpose for this video, that exact line. And it's also why I want this video to be more of a discussion, to see what you guys think about this, because clearly there's a difference of opinion here. I'm just gonna assume that she didn't know the intention of that tweet was like a lol kind of thing. I was kind of joking, in a sense, kind of. I wasn't entirely joking because there are a lot of things that Christianity does condemn, like I said before. But at the same time, no one in their right mind would actually think Christianity condemns every form of happiness ever. Like if someone walked outside and they're like, what a beautiful day, the sunshine makes me happy. Like I would never sit here and be like, oh yeah, no, Christians can't enjoy that. Christianity would condemn that happiness. Hey, at least somebody replied to her who understood the context. Extreme Christianity and the logic of the Bible, but hey, that's just me and I can't speak for Jaclyn. I just think this was supposed to be a somewhat arguably funny tweet. I mean, I found it funny and not to be taken as serious, but just my take on this. Some other people weren't as kind. I may be Jewish, but it's pretty obvious, and there are studies that show this too, that religion makes people happier. It's also why secular people tend to be more left than religious people do in order to fill that void. Yes, you got me. I am left-leaning because of the void that Christianity has left in me. I don't even know how you make that connection. Checks Bible. Nope, still don't see where being happy is a sin or wrong. Where is she getting this from? Probably coming from an overwhelming lack of happiness with her life. That's my guess. Man, people are nasty. Obviously, a big factor in happiness is mental health. So I found an article from the Friendly Atheist that is relevant to this and very interesting. I will link the full thing in the description, but this clip says, religion continues to blame weak faith as the cause of mental illness, insisting greater devotion is the solution. A recent study found that 50% of evangelical Christians believe mental illness can be treated by prayer and Bible study alone. Research from 2008 found that evangelical Christians and Orthodox Jews are less likely to seek treatment and more likely to perpetuate the stigma against mental illness. Just another thing pointing to the fact that being religious can hurt your overall happiness. So again, in an effort to make this more of a discussion, I tweeted out asking, are atheists happier than Christians or vice versa? If you've converted or deconverted, when were you happiest and why? So I'm just gonna read through some of the top comments and discuss. Leanne says, I felt happier after becoming an atheist. Living in fear of going to hell for being who I am just made me so unhappy. I relate to that. I completely relate to that. I mean, I grew up with teachers, I went to Catholic school, constantly telling me if you do this, you're going to hell, if you do that, you're going to hell. They would try to scare the shit out of us. And I still, to this day, struggle with guilt over things that I shouldn't feel guilt for, which is an entirely different story and actually worthy of a video at some point in the future, but it's a struggle. When I became an atheist, I felt so much happier personally. Like, this is the happiest I've ever been in my life as an atheist. And the reason for that is because when I was religious, this hell, the idea of hell was constantly looming over my head. I was worried if my friends were gonna go to hell, if my family was gonna go to hell, if I was gonna interpret something in the Bible wrong, and that would send me to hell. And that doesn't mean that once you become an atheist, you're like, woo, I'm gonna go rob banks and sleep with everyone. That's not what happens. That's what people think happens, but that is not what happens. In fact, I feel like becoming an atheist has made me a lot more moral, because this theme in Christianity oftentimes is that the weak and the meek will inherit the earth. That if you're poor or if you're sick or if you're struggling, that you'll be rewarded in heaven in some grand afterlife. Well, no, whenever I became an atheist, I let go of that. And I'm like, wow, this is it. This life right now is all we have. This is it. If I don't help that person right now over there that's suffering, they're not gonna get some kind of grand reward. They're gonna suffer and then they're gonna die. And I'm sorry to get really dark right now, but that is the truth. If I'm not charitable now, if I'm not good to people now, that's their only chance. I just hurt their only chance to have a happy life. Even if it's in a little way, it just seems more significant knowing that this brief amount of time is all we have and that there's not gonna be any reward. So you better not be a dick now while you can. Help as many people as you can. Smile at someone passing you on the road. It's not that hard. When I was a Christian, I was terrified of the idea of hell, completely ashamed of being bisexual, thought I could never be good enough for God, was suicidal because I thought this life didn't matter. I'm happier as an atheist. I love my life and realize how precious it is. Laura Lulu says, personally, I'm happier now that I'm atheist. No more unnecessary guilt, begging tearfully for forgiveness to a non-existent entity, fear of hell if I make mistakes, policing my own thoughts, or struggling to reconcile my views of good and morality with those of a violent, sick God. That's like exactly how I feel. It's what I just said. See, I'm not the only one, and that's why I love making videos like this, is you realize you're not the only one that feels this way. I think happiness relates to the person you are and what you're more comfortable with. Me, I can't live with Christianity, so I've been much more content and myself after I realized I didn't need religion. Other people just need something to give them purpose, therefore God. That's true. I mean, and I'm not gonna shit on somebody who is ill or going through something in their life and they turn to religion and find some kind of comfort in that. That's fine. You know, at the end of the day, I would rather someone talk to a friend or someone who's there. I would rather someone at least come to the conclusion that of their own mental capacity, they were strong enough to overcome something on their own and feel really proud of themselves for doing that, instead of giving credit to a God. But if, at the end of the day, if religion does bring those people peace, I'm not gonna shit on them for doing that. Katie says, I am a Christian and I realize that while I may feel happy with worldly things, my happiness lasts longer when I realize that God is with me. I feel more safe and protected when I realize that I have God by my side. Yeah, like I said, that's fine. I'm not gonna say anything negative about that person. If they feel happier, you know, within themselves because they have some kind of religious or spiritual belief, that's fine. But I think having some self-worth involved in that and realizing that you are strong and you are accomplishing things because you have done what it takes to learn and grow as a person, you know, if you want to incorporate God into that, then fine. But oftentimes I see people just say, oh, it's just because of God, and they just belittle themselves or don't give themselves credit, which is really sad. I am so much happier as an atheist. Being told that I couldn't ever truly be myself as a transgender person in the eyes of God always brought down my self-esteem, as I tried desperately to tell myself that I could be happy without transitioning to male. I am happy to be who I am. What I had to say was too long for a tweet, so I took a screenshot of what I had to say. To sum it up though, I became an atheist at least a year after watching your videos. I've never been happier in my life. When I was a kid, I hated myself. I had severe anxiety and I wanted to kill myself. I was terrified all the time because I found myself unable to believe completely. Growing up, my family told me these stories of the Bible. I was scared shitless. I felt as though I'd never be enough. It's difficult to describe it, but simply put, the worst parts of my life was when I was a Christian, because I was a Christian. My family constantly spoke poorly of the LGBT community and such things. I always disagreed and felt bad for it. My guilt worsened when I realized I was a part of the LGBT. It was poor times. Finding your videos, I realized that I agreed more with you than my family or Christianity. I slowly, over a long period of time, lost all belief in the flying spaghetti monster. As an atheist, I've never been happier. Honestly, that's kind of what I expected. I expected a lot of people in the LGBTQ community to come forward and say that obviously they're much happier without having the burden of religion telling them that there's something wrong with them, that they can't be who they are happily and be accepted into heaven. What a terrible feeling that must be, especially growing up as a kid. I can't even imagine. I will admit that obviously polling my Twitter followers is biased because I have a very atheist following. Just like when these people shared my tweet on their Christian sites, they're gonna get a lot of responses that are not favorable towards me. But in my personal experience, I think the strongest argument I've heard for Christians being happier is that they feel they will see their loved ones again that have passed. There's really nothing comforting I can say to that, and it's really a hard conversation for me to have with someone who's sitting there saying, how could you tell me I'm never gonna see my parents again that died, or, you know, a sibling, or my husband that died. Like someone messaged me that years ago, and I remember reading their letter. Somebody sent it to my P.O. box, and I felt so horrible because there's nothing I can say. There's nothing I can say to comfort those people, which is why I understand why people sometimes turn to religion for comfort. I get it. I'll never be able to go down that path, even though it would be nice. Trying not to sound rude saying this, but ignorance is bliss. You know, sometimes if you don't know the answers, or you pretend that you know a nice answer, it makes things feel a lot better. But I couldn't really do that. I couldn't believe that fully. I would always know in the back of my mind that I was lying to myself, and there's no comfort in that for me. And since it does seem that there are a lot of arguments on both sides, I want to throw this back out into the audience, like I said. Everybody watching, leave a comment. Tell me your story. You know, be your own lawyer. Tell me the pros and cons of the argument in your eyes. Try to do it with an open heart and understanding, because I don't want it to get ugly. I mean, it's the internet, so there's always going to be ugliness in the comments. But if we could be respectful of each other and just have like a nice conversation. You know, some people are going to be religious. Obviously, it's my channel. There's going to be more atheist people. But if you see a religious person talking about how they found comfort going through a hard time in their life, let's not bash them, please. Because like I said, we only have this one life to live. And I think we should try as best we can to make each person's experience as good as it can be while we are here. Anyways, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. I will be reading a lot of these comments, so please take part, share this video, spread the discussion. I want to get all different kinds of perspectives. Give it to Christian websites. Like I want a diverse group of people answering. And again, thank you to everybody supporting me on Patreon. Since I do discuss controversial things on this channel, it's very difficult to keep going when YouTube constantly demonetizes me all of the time. So if you like what I'm doing here and want to support me on Patreon, I will leave a link to that in the description below. Again, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!